I don't think there's a great team in the league. Probably the best performance that I've seen this year for 60 minutes, Chris, was LSU going to Mississippi State and laying waste to them. But we all know what happened to them a couple of weeks ago against FSU. So I don't know that there's a great team in the league. We'll know a lot more about Ole Miss this weekend. And quite frankly, if they beat Alabama, then Alabama is done. Alabama's season is up in flames. And I know technically they would still be alive in the SEC West, and it could be a wide open race. But I'm sorry, if they lose at home to the Ole Miss Rebels, and you still have to go to College Station, to Starkville, to Auburn, LSU at home, Tennessee at home, Alabama's not winning the Western Division. And to me, if they lose this game, I'm going to wonder how Saban's going to react, because they've never lost 2 games this early in the season. If it happened, this would be in the first month of the season. If you remember his first year, that they played LSU and had a lead against the eventual national champions, and they were 6-2 at that point. So they were still, and they weren't supposed to be good, and they ended up not being great. They ended up being 7-6. So there really wasn't a lot of expectations. And then in 2010, the year after they won their first championship, they still, when they went to LSU in November, they still had a shot. They only had 1 loss. It was to South Carolina on the road, but then they lost LSU in a tight game. And then they weren't going to be a championship contender by the time they got to Auburn, but then they lost that crazy, comeback game and ended up winning the 10th game against Michigan State, and then won 2 straight national championships. But in reality, they've been in contention every year. This is the most peril I've seen a Nick Saban team under ever. And I mean, even the first year, because they started much stronger than people anticipated. But this is a huge fork in the road game, not just for this year, but for what I think, it is Nick Saban near the end. I mean, because I have not liked what I've seen so far. I don't like the vibe around the team. I don't like the leadership, I think, on the field. I don't think it's been very good. And they do a lot of talking, but not a lot of action. And so I'm just really anxious to see if Nick Saban can reach this team. He's always known what buttons to push, but quite frankly, I have no idea what's going to happen on Saturday. I was leaning toward Alabama before Saban came out and quickly named Milroe the starter again, only because I thought Tyler Buchner had earned a shot to be the guy with a quick hook if he was struggling in the first half with Milroe ready to go. And because I thought he was the first snaps of his career that meant something. And I thought, and think about this. They were losing 3-0 to a South Florida team that's 8-43 in their last 51 games going into that game. And so they're losing. But he led them to 17 points. It was ugly. It was probably the ugliest Saban win since 2014, a 14-13 win in Fayetteville against Arkansas that galvanized that team. But that was an SEC opponent, not a group of 5 opponent that's probably going to have a losing record, that had already been blown out by Western Kentucky and had trouble with Florida A&M. So, again, it was not a great effort, but I thought he earned a start. He didn't get one. And now we got to see what Milroe does, because I'll be honest with you, Chris. I've said it on my show. I've already said it on another show this morning, and I'll say it here. Milroe was suspended, okay? You don't go from to third.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense, because he didn't play great against Texas, but he still threw for 255 yards and a couple of touchdowns. He went from first to third because of he had a bad week on and off the field, and then had to kind of win the coaches back. And he's done so quickly. And I guess he does have the locker room, so we'll see if it works. But I guess I got to tell you, Nick Saban, Tommy Rees, and Eric Wolford, they're all on the clock, man. This team is too talented to look like they've looked. And right now, I would give the coaching job a D, at least offensively. And with this team overall, the defense is playing well. The special teams has been good. But the offense, it's a D. It's just been horrendous.
Okay, that's interesting on Milroe. Was that didn't react well to being told the quarterback job was maybe up for competition, or was the quarterback job up for competition because of something else?
I'll just say it in this way. I think he had a bad week on the practice field, and I think he had some things off the field.
Okay, fair enough.
Field. So I just think overall, it was a combination of things. but it was enough to where let's just say, and you could tell by the body language and everything that was going on the sideline against South Florida, no matter what happened in that game, he was not playing because they traveled Dylan Lonergan. They traveled 4 quarterbacks. Okay. And they let Milroe dress and travel, but he was not going to play because it was going to be Tyler Buchner. And the plan was Buchner could put the game away, and then you play Simpson probably and just get him some reps. But guess what? Buchner was so bad, and he got kind of hung out to dry by the coaching staff too, because they didn't run any zone read. They didn't run any RPO because Tyler Buchner is more of a gamer. And what I mean by that is he's not a pure passer. He needs to use his mobility. He needs to throw the ball on the run, moving pocket, use his legs, get him going. It's one of those things where you almost need to run him a few times, then get him throwing the football. He's not a pure passer, and I thought they kind of hung him out to dry. Now, he had throws he should have made, and he almost had a 50-yard touchdown he hit. But it was just a tough situation all the way around, plus a monsoon hit. But, again, I just felt like overall that the game plan wasn't great. It really wasn't great for Texas. So I just think overall, though, with Tyler Buchner, he does have more experience than the other quarterbacks, but it was at another school under Tommy Rees. But Tommy Rees is running Nick Saban's offense. But what Nick Saban needs to do, they need to kind of go back in time. They changed their offense for Tua Tagovailoa and even for Jalen Hurts to a degree, and they need to do it again because you can't run what you were running under Bryce Young with these 2 quarterbacks, Buchner and Milroe. You can with Ty Simpson if you keep getting him reps and if you decide to develop Dylan Lonergan this year. But if you're going to use Tyler Buchner and especially Jalen Milroe, who have great mobility, the offense has got to be tailored to their strengths, and they've got to tweak some things and do it in a hurry with an Ole Miss team, Chris, that's coming in undefeated. And if you know this league, you guys do a great job at Southeastern 14. There is nothing that Lane Kiffin and Pete Golding would rather do than beat Nick Saban.
Well, and if he doesn't beat Nick Saban this Saturday, that's going to kind of become one of those, okay, if he can't do it now, is he ever going to do it things, which I think that's unfair. I mean, didn't we hear that about Kirby Smart when he didn't beat Alabama a couple times? Like, oh, he's never going to do it. We know how that turned out. But that's going to be an interesting situation to monitor at Ole Miss if they don't win that game Saturday.
It is. I mean, but I will say this. The difference is Georgia with Kirby, I know they hadn't done anything since Herschel Walker from a national championship perspective, but they've won SEC championships under Mark Richt. They've got a history of, competing. Ole Miss has not won a championship in the league since the 60s. And I'll just say this about Ole Miss. They're comfortable where they're at, like from the standpoint, they want to win a championship. It's not like they don't. But if they don't beat Alabama, it's not like they're going to fire Lane Kiffin. He rebuffed Auburn last year when they were heavily, flirting with him. They're paying him $9 million a year. If Lane Kiffin, even if he doesn't beat Alabama, if he goes 8-4 and 9-3 every year and continues to be a factor on Twitter and trending in social media, Ole Miss is going to be just fine with that because I think their administration is comfortable with it, and they would like them to beat Alabama every now and then. He doesn't have to beat Alabama every year or every other year. They just like him to beat Alabama every, one time. And I think it would buy him even more equity. But I think the one thing about Ole Miss is they know where they are. They know who they are. And they know that, again, that they should be a bowl team this year. Lane's done a good job of that. He got them to the Sugar Bowl a couple of years ago. He's been building this program. Now, a next big step would be beating Alabama. There's no question about it. And I'll be honest with you. If they do beat Alabama, to me, I really have to question where this Alabama football program's going because I think they still have a lot of talent. I still say this. I still think they got one of the best running back rooms in the SEC. I think the wide receiver room is better than people think. And I think the O-line can improve if it's tweaked properly because, trust me, I've been around this Bama program. I've seen O-line struggle. I watched 2012, one of the best O-lines they ever had. They beat Willie Taggart in Western Kentucky 35-0, but I think gave up 7 sacks and Fluker gave up 5. They looked terrible in pass protection. But by the end of the year, they were the best O-line in the country. So they can improve. But again, I'm going to put it squarely on it. It's the coaching. It's coaching right now. It's not talent. And I understand this is an NIL transfer portal era, and I told you about the locker room and the culture and everything, but that's on the coaches. You got to learn how to reach kids, and you got to coach them and put them in the best position. So the onus this week is on Alabama's offensive staff, because you got to find a way, to win this game. You got to find a way to get in the 30s, because Lane's going to score, and they've got a talented offense, and you got to score in this league. And if you can't get, I'll just say this, Alabama's magic number to me is somewhere between 31 and 35. If they don't get it there, even though the defense has played well, then they're going to be in a dogfight, and it might not go their way. They've got to find a way to score points.
Drew, I think people have trouble understanding that there can be multiple explanations for things. I mean, and I do think some of this is on coaching, but you say it's not a talent issue. Look, you know that program 20 times better than I do. And so when you say something, I'm going to respect it. But when I watch them, okay, quarterback, they don't have a talented quarterback like they've had in the past. I don't see a Derrick Henry. I don't see a receiving group like they've had. I don't see linemen like they've had. I don't see a Will Anderson on that team, although Dallas Turner's plenty good. Is it not somewhat a talent issue, or tell me where I'm missing that here if I'm wrong?
Well, I don't think it's as much of a talent issue. Is there a Derrick Henry? Is there a Mark Ingram right now? Maybe a running back? No, but there's Eddie Lacy's there. He was a round pick. Jace McClellan can play in the NFL. Roydell Williams just had 130 yards, and he ran the ball hard. I know the two guys, the young guys, I think they need more opportunities. Jam Miller and Justice Haynes, what I've seen from them in practices and scrimmages, I know they can play. And then, again, these receivers, these are not the ride outs. I mean, there's not first and second round picks, but I think Jermaine Burton is capable of making an NFL team. Ja'Cory Brooks has been MIA. He's really kind of fallen off the map. We'll see if he gets back. I mean, I think he had some opportunities. He was open against Texas. They missed him. But I think Bond has made some plays. I think he can play in an NFL roster. I definitely love the young tight end, Nye Black. We saw finally C.J. Dupree make a big play Saturday. What it is, it's twofold. They've got to come up with a cohesive plan on offense and help settle the offensive line down, because not having Tyler Buchner last week was huge. He's their best interior offensive lineman, probably the leader of the room. They got to get him back, but they got to have cohesion with an offensive plan. They've got to get the O-line going. And then, quite frankly, I still say majority of these issues have been the quarterback. There's been a lot of holding the ball too long. And then the biggest problem with Milroe, he is one of the three fastest players on the team. He is arguably the best athlete on the team. He's 6'2", 220 pounds. Here's the problem. Some of it is mentality. I know people that know his family very well and the people around him, and this is the way they've coached him to at Alabama, and that's why I put the onus on the coaches. They're trying to make him into a pocket quarterback, and he's not. He's not a 1-2-3 read pocket QB. What he is he's a zone read RPO QB with amazing athleticism and speed, and he needs to be using that to his advantage. They need to be putting extra pressure on defenses with his legs, which will help the running game and which should help the wide receivers get open, even though they're not as dynamic. It should be an offense very similar to the one you saw under Dennis Franchione many years ago for Alabama. And I'll argue then when Dennis was – because remember, when Dennis came to Alabama, they were coming off probation. They didn't have a running back room in those days as deep as this one, and they didn't have great receivers. But he got them wide open because he schemed them open. So right now, Tommy Rees is making $1.9 million. Nick Saban's making $11 million. Wolford's a highly paid, and I think $900,000 offensive line coach. You got to earn your money. You guys got to come up with a plan to where these guys can be effective. You can still be a really good offensive unit. And I'll be honest, I don't think this is a great Ole Miss defense. I think they can be had. I think they've got some personnel deficiencies, but Alabama has to start playing up to their talent level, and they're not. And when they're and a friend of mine who I respect in this business, you always have these guys you can go to, Chris. I know you do, that I respect tremendously. He has so many coaching contacts. He knows recruiting backwards and forwards. He told me this weekend, poor coaching can really mask talent. Like you think, well, these guys don't have that many good players. Well, it's because your scheme's not very good and you're not doing a very good job of putting your players in position to perform. And I think from an offensive standpoint, we've seen a lot of that at Alabama so far. They played well against Middle Tennessee, and Milroe used his legs, but But I just don't think there's been enough quarterback run game incorporated in this. But I also say this. I think the coaching staff has to reach Milroe and be like, look, you are gifted. We have to use your explosive athletic ability if we are going to win football games. That is one of the things that has to be featured in this offense, and he has to understand that. And he's got to do his job, run the zone read properly, run the RPO, and they ran some RPO at the beginning of the Texas game, and we're moving the football. But you have to stay with that. To me, that has to be the bread and butter of your offense with this group, because they've been blessed. And you mentioned it already at the beginning of the segment with quarterback play, even going all the way back to Jalen Hurts. The one thing Jalen did too, unlike Milroe is a good deep ball thrower, but Milroe has struggled with the short intermediate game. Jalen did not.
Yeah.
And the thing Jalen never did, Jalen never turned it over. Okay. I think in about 3 starts, Milroe has got 6 turnovers. Hurts in 2 years had 10. He didn't turn the ball over. And then after that, you've got Tua Tagovailoa, Mac Jones, and Bryce Young. That's pretty good. You can run a drop back RPO based passing system then, because you've got quarterbacks that are comfortable reading, that are great passers, that know how to throw with accuracy, anticipation, and rhythm. Right now, you don't have that. So you've got to tweak what you're doing. And it's just like back with Andrew Zhao, Tyler Watts days. Tyler Watts was a perfect fit for Franchione's offense, and that's why he did so well, because he could run and throw. Well, Jalen Milroe can do that too, but what they have to do is scheme, and then and quite frankly, this is Milroe's last shot. What I mean by that is if they drop another game or two and he's not playing well and he loses his job again, I don't think he'll get it back, because Alabama's going to go to the young guys. He's got to keep the turnovers down, just make plays, use his athleticism, use what God gave him. And Alabama can still be a good football team in this league and at least make a run at the SEC West. But a big fork in the road, and probably the biggest in the Saban era now in a long, long time, as far as continuing to keep this program atop the SEC, is Saturday at 2:30.
All right, I've got 2 comments and an observation. One of them, and I think Blaine makes a great point here. And you look at these names that he's bringing up. I don't know if you can see it on your screen.
I can see it.
But, I mean, Alabama had analysts who were, elite coordinator and head coach types as analysts. I mean, I don't know that you can ever do that again. It's like back when Miami had – how many NFL players on the team that played Ohio State for the Natty that one year?
Right.
I just don't know. That's it. Even for Nick Saban, can you ever hit it like that again? I don't know that that's realistic. And then the talent. I mean, we named the players, and I think your point was a good one. You probably said the thing that connected the dots for me. Yeah, just because they're not Derrick Henry and Devontae Smith doesn't mean they're not NFL level players. And to me, that was kind of the explanation that closed the loop for me there.
Damian Harris, he's 3,000 yard rusher, and he's still in the NFL. Not all of them are going to be first round picks, but they're NFL players. And I just think they're not being showcased properly. And right now, you mentioned and Blaine's had that comment. I will say Alabama's still recruiting at a very high level. I mean, they signed arguably the top class he's ever signed this past, December and into February. They have a very talented freshman class in there right now. But you bring up a good point. He has been gutted over the years. He's never returned his whole coaching staff. He's had a lot of analysts, the Major Applewhites. He lost a big one that's been with him for 2 different stints. Alex Mortensen left to go to the UAB with Trent Dilfer as offensive coordinator. He was kind of a quarterback whisperer, guru kind of guy. So right now he does. I think he's made some poor hires. There's no doubt in my mind, guys that aren't elite coaches. I don't think 2 of their defensive coaches, Coleman Hutzler, along that with the outside linebackers, and the defensive line coach, Freddie Roach, are elite coaches. And that's on defense. Yeah. And the defense hasn't been the problem. But I don't think they're elite. And then right now, there is major question because last year everybody was, if Bill O'Brien's gone, they'll be fine. Well, they averaged 40 points a game. I thought Bill did a good job. Was he a great fit for the college game? Probably not, but he still produced. How many points per game did they average? Well, right now, Tommy Rees, and he inherited some of this, but Tommy Rees is making a lot of money. You've got to figure it out. You've got to figure out where the puzzle pieces go. Eric Wolford has to figure it out. And Nick Saban, because Nick Saban, I'm going to go back to, I know he's reviled by some people, but it's a quote that I've never forgotten. And it was when he, and I still think he was a trailblazer as a high school coach, and he said it on the Two-A-Day show. I'll never forget Rush Probst saying this. When you build a beast, you have to learn how to feed it every year because the expectations don't change. Everybody wants to win every year. And if once you establish that as the standard, and what do they talk about all the time? The Bama standard. Well, they've got to get back to that. And again, they've got to figure this stuff out. And there's a lot of pressure. But you're paid a lot of money. And so Alabama's got talent. I think they've got more talent than Ole Miss. I think they should beat Ole Miss at home. But are they going to look like a cohesive unit? Are they going to look like a team? They've already had another closed-door meeting with the players this week to start the week. Is it going to work? I've been asked that already 10 times. Like, what do you know about the meeting? I just said, I don't know much. But I said, I just say this. They've done a lot of talking and not a lot of playing. So you need to let your pads and your helmets do the talking. And that's what Alabama needs to do on Saturday against Ole Miss.
The other thing I want to ask you, we look at this and we say, how in the world could the greatest coach in the history of college football, with the quarterbacks they have produced, not have a quarterback? And someone explained it to me this way. It wasn't like they stopped recruiting quarterbacks and weren't in on guys, but kids look at that room and they say, hey, wait a minute, you're having Heisman guys back up other Heisman guys, that kind of thing. And do I want to sit and wait my turn, or do I want to go to another elite program and have a chance to play faster? Is that a fair way to put it? That, yeah, maybe if everybody knew in 2023 things were going to play out this way, that they would have had different guys in the room?
Well, here's what I think happened. They definitely would have taken Drake May. He committed to Alabama before he ever went to North Carolina. But if everybody digs with the May family, uncle's father played at North Carolina football, Luke May basketball, whole family went to UNC. Okay. And then it goes back to your point. He saw Bryce Young on the team and he'd have to wait 2 years to play. He didn't want to do that. And then they also hook him up with a big NIL deal with Jordan Brand, UNC. So there you go. I mean, and guess what? He's still probably going to be the first or the second pick coming out of North Carolina. So he didn't hurt himself in any way. He got on the field for 2 full years. So that's what happened there. And then I think Coach Saban and I think they thought Ty Simpson, being a 5-star, and he looked great, but he came from a small school, Martin High School in Tennessee. And he was a son of a coach, but they thought he was going to be ready after a redshirt year to really win this job and probably beat out Jalen Milroe. But once they realized, oh, Lord, he didn't make the progress we wanted in the spring, and neither did Milroe, we got to go get somebody. When probably what they should have done, there was 2 other options that could have been bridges for a year that are likely both going to be in the NFL draft next year, Chris. And what they could, if they had been done their due diligence a little better and realized, okay, I'm not sure Ty's ready. I guess they put too much into that. But if they knew they were going to have to go into the portal, and they realized it kind of late, and that's why they had to go get Buchner, who lost the job to Sam Hartman. But quite frankly, Alabama should have been in the Sam Hartman or Riley Leonard sweepstakes. I know they flirted with Tyler Van Dyke, but that was after spring practice, and he wasn't going to leave Miami.
Miami's got money too.
But Riley Leonard is from Fairhope, Alabama. I watched him play high school basketball. He's basically a more athletic Jake Coker, and he had a great redshirt freshman year at Duke. If you're going through third parties, and we all know this is how this is done, if Alabama lets Riley Leonard know, you want to come home and play quarterback for the University of Alabama, they could have got him or Sam Hartman as a bridge for a year to give Ty more time, and then you got Dylan Lonergan, your redshirting, and then Julian Sayin coming in. But instead, I think they miscalculated it, and they were hoping that even over the summer that Ty Simpson would continue to improve. And I think he had a good summer, but it's just been a maturity thing. And even though Ty did a good job last week, he's still not quite ready, I think, in the coach's eyes to be the guy yet. Now, he may get another opportunity this year depending on Milroe. But again, I think the big thing they miscalculated was Ty Simpson's development, and they had to go get Tyler Buchner. And while he's a gamer type, he's definitely notches below a Riley Leonard or a Sam Hartman. And that's right now, that's why Alabama is. And because Drake May didn't want to wait. Sometimes it's the old adage, like you said, you got a loaded room. well, sometimes it's hard to recruit kids. And Steve Sarkisian actually did sign Milroe, really liked him as a player. They've always liked his upside. But again, so much of quarterbacking is the neck up. And I think that's where Milroe has struggled a lot with his reads and his ability to process and get rid of the ball on time. And same way even with Ty Simpson, I think it's still a little fast for him. And so remember, Mac Jones, he had the luxury of sitting behind Tua and Jalen, and he didn't play till his 4th year. But that in this day and time, that is just not happening a lot. And so he even had a year of eligibility left when he turned pro, did Mac, because there was nothing more for him to do. I mean, he lit it up. He won a national championship. So, but again, I just think Alabama overcalculated their QB room. I think they thought Ty would be ready. I thought Ty would be ready. I think I may have gone on your show in the spring and said I thought Ty Simpson would win the job, but he just has not been ready. I thought he did a good job in a difficult circumstance the other day, but he's opened the door for Milroe, and now this is Milroe's show. And he is with what Coach Saban did yesterday, he is unquestionably QB1, but now he has to keep the job and perform. If he does, Alabama, and he can protect the ball, they've still got a chance to have a good year. But if everything runs off the rails in the next 2 weeks, then to me, you got to cut your losses and just play the young guys and then keep recruiting and trying to bring in another elite talent like a Julian Sayin to try to develop at the quarterback position and have a true competition in the spring. But it's, but it happens to everyone. I mean, Coach Bowden his program finally started, kind of declining a little bit, and then he ended up being forced into retirement. What I've told a lot of people, I think Nick Saban's on the greatest run we've ever seen in college football history, but I hope it ends like he wants it to, and he deserves to coach as long as he wants to. There's no way he should be on a hot seat. But what we've always seen most of the time is that these coaching journeys and these guys' careers a lot of times don't end the way you want them to.
Yeah,
and either they hang around too long, or either like a Joe Paterno or a Bobby Bowden, or they just end up by the time they're done, they're just not winning football games or basketball games anymore at the clip that you're accustomed to seeing, and they end up retiring. And it's still a big deal, like a Bob Knight. But Bob Knight was his own worst enemy. But, his career, he ended his career at Texas Tech, okay? He should have ended it at Indiana, but that was a lot of his own doing. But, again, a lot of times these coaching journeys, they don't end like Coach K a lot of times, where you're in the Final Four for it all. That's kind of a fairy tale. Hopefully Nick Saban will have a fairy tale. He deserves it. But this is going to be maybe the toughest challenge of his career because of this NIL, the transfer portal, and the players having all the power.